Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Tracy Alexander. And coming up in today's newscast, the money has started to come as over 1 million Israelis get their hands on the first wave of COVID-19 government grants. We speak with the mother of IDF soldier Hadar Golden 6 years since his abduction by Hamas terrorists. And Learn, Play, Speak, the incredible initiative for parents hoping to entertain and educate their children during these solitary summer holidays and beyond. Well, long in the works and arriving none too soon, the government's coronavirus-era stimulus grants are finally making their way to the public. Nittany Manson has the details.
Approved in the Knesset and launched this morning, 1.2 million Israelis have just received the first wave of government grants intended to help families and stimulate the economy amidst the pandemic crisis. The first rollout going to families with kids under 18 years old, the second wave going to seniors, and then finally the rest of the country's adults. Israel's National Insurance Institute, in charge of dispensing the funds, is promising to dole out payments to at least 1 million Israelis every day until they've finished. The total cost of the stimulus amounting to 6.5 billion shekels. The payments, in the works for weeks, are also falling in line with the country's new coronavirus czar's plan of action. Professor Roni Gamzu saying that while hospitalizations and the possible collapse of the health system are a concern, the socioeconomic trauma is much greater. Since the start of the pandemic, Israel's unemployment rate has skyrocketed to over 25%. With that in mind, Gamzu has now vowed not to institute any more sudden or heavy closures without concrete and explicit reason. To that end, Gamzu is pushing to reopen most stores and malls by this weekend, the airways by mid-August, and schools by September 1 with some exceptions. Namely that reopening yeshivas and seminaries to students from abroad was not Gamzu's idea, and that may be subject to reform. Students from the U.S. in particular will likely be barred until a later date, and any institutions or foreigners found breaking regulations will be subject to closures or deportation. Meanwhile, a uniform plan to reopen cultural events, places of work, synagogues, etc. is reportedly in the works too. Now coming back to health, it may be second to the economy, but not by much. 3 major hospitals already operating at over 100% capacity in their COVID-19 wards, and 2 more at over 90%. Though the Hebrew University alleges that Israel is gaining control over the second wave thanks to stabilizing numbers of the seriously and moderately ill. New infections over the weekend, raising the total number of cases in Israel to over 72,300. Active cases now at around 26,000, 340 seriously ill, and the death toll raising to a terrible 531. Among the latest infections, Jerusalem Affairs Minister Rafi Peretz, who confirmed testing positive over the weekend, though he says he currently feels well. This makes for the third Israeli lawmaker to test positive for coronavirus, following former Health Minister Yaakov Litzman and Joint List MK Sami Abu Shahdeh. Peretz having apparently caught it from his minister's Director General Avi Cohen. And meanwhile, Jerusalem District Police Commander Doron Yadid will also be entering quarantine after coming into contact with Peretz last week.
Now, the incitement to murder Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his family is breaking records. That's the headline on a video posted on the Premier's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram pages. The clips shows a range of examples of incitement against him at recent anti-government protests. The hateful imagery shows graffiti on a wall that reads "Death to Bibi." It also shows a screenshot of a social media post that says, "I wish Yair Netanyahu will be orphaned by his 2 parents soon," referring to the Prime Minister's son, and an image of Netanyahu in a noose. This as a nearly 15,000 strong demonstration packed the streets of Jerusalem overnight. Aaron Parish reports.
One by one, upwards of 15,000 Israelis poured into Jerusalem's Paris Square Saturday night. The massive crowds, at times taking on a festive character, peacefully but loudly calling for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ousting and an end to alleged government corruption.
It's one of the biggest demonstrations in Jerusalem since people gather here to protest, to say we had enough. Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, is corrupt. He's He's not capable of leading, he's not capable of managing the country anymore because he's so much involved in what is going on with his trial. He's only centered in this. He's not caring about the people, he's not caring about the citizen. He can't do anything.
But taking a positive turn from protests last week, violent outbursts were practically nil this weekend. Police, appearing to soften their stance, even allowed protesters to remain in the square until around 1 a.m. before moving to disperse the crowds. Of those that refused to leave, some were removed with force, about a dozen being detained or arrested, several protesters again alleging police used a lot of aggression while carrying out their orders. Still, demonstrators vowing to continue, whatever it takes. In the meantime, on the other side, the latest to come under fire for threatening the protesters is none other than Prime Minister Netanyahu's son. The 29-year-old Yair Netanyahu has been summoned to appear in court today for threatening harassment. This after calling for protests outside the homes of the Black Flag demonstration's organizers. Organizers alleging that they received a torrent of threats following Netanyahu's call on Twitter, complete with an attachment revealing names, addresses, and birthdays.
Well, you'll remember that hashtag from last week, No Space for Jew Hate, which underlined the campaign against anti-Semitism on platforms like Twitter. Well, that 48-hour silence on Twitter had barely even lifted before the social media giant was once again in the headlines. Twitter executives have rebuffed a request from the Israeli government to remove tweets from Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calling for the genocide of Israeli people. It claims, as reported in the New York Post, that the Jew hate qualifies as comments on current affairs. Here's the Knesset hearing in which Israeli representatives asked Twitter for an explanation.
Just Arsen wanted a quick question. He's sitting around the table.
Sure, just a quick question. Hi, my name is Arsen Ostrovsky from the Israeli Jewish Congress, also a human rights lawyer. First of all, thank you very much, Ms. Patterson, for your participation here. I have a simple question. You have recently started flagging the tweets of President Trump. Why have you not flagged the tweets of Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei, who has literally called for the genocide of Israel and the Jewish people?
So,
So we have an approach to world leaders that presently say that direct interactions with fellow public figures, comments on political issues of the day, or foreign policy saber-rattling on military economic issues are generally not in violation
calling
of
for
our
genocide is okay, but commenting on politics is not, just so we understand. I just want to fine-tune the question. Calling for genocide on Twitter is okay, but commenting on political situations in certain countries is not okay?
So if a world leader violates our rules, but it is a clear interest in keeping that up on the service, we may place it behind a notice that provides some more context about the violation and allows people to click through if they wish to see that type of content.
In a White House press briefing, the press secretary is saying the US will take action. Take a look.
Tells you where these social media companies stand, where they're not willing to assess the Ayatollah Khomeini's tweets, but they are willing to assess President Trump's tweets. It's really appalling, and it just speaks to their overwhelming, blinding bias against conservatives and against this president. And we are taking action.
Now, Arsen Ostrovsky is an international human rights lawyer and was one representative for Israel at the Knesset hearing that you saw him asking Twitter's representative for an explanation, and he now joins me here in studio with more. Arsen, a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So give us a little bit of context. How did this all come to a head?
There's a few things that came together. You mentioned in your introduction that there was a campaign originating in the UK, No Safe Space for Jew Hate campaign. So you had that. You had a lot of interest recently on the growing anti-Semitism online, which is becoming a very serious problem, only exacerbated by the corona pandemic. And if you look at it in terms of the context of the US situation with the whole big debate for freedom of speech. So all of these three things came together to a head at the Knesset last week.
And of course, your name was even mentioned in a Fox News article that was picked up on Fox and Friends. They're talking about it all across the United States. Why do you think it's gained so much traction?
Look, I think a lot of those issues that I just mentioned at the beginning, but also, it's the image of the Twitter representative speaking before the Knesset to a room full of Israelis and saying that calls for genocide and our destruction is a legitimate form of political expression. I think that was just jarring. It also highlighted really these gross double standards where, as I mentioned in my question, where they flagged President Trump's tweets, but not Khamenei's tweets, literally calling for our destruction. So you combine all of that, and you combine that with the whole debate about free speech, with the overreach of the tech companies and social media giants in the US, the election coming up.
Sure, whether
it all
there's
came
a political
together,
agenda at play as well. So anti-Semitism online, as you've mentioned, is nothing new, but talk us through how it really is showing up online. Where is it and in what forms?
Look, it's a vicious, vicious thing online, and it comes in different forms and against different targets. It manifests itself in attacks on Jews, in direct incitement for violence, as we've seen by the Iranian leaders. You can see it in Holocaust denial, where people are openly questioning the Holocaust. You see groups that are affiliated with the Hamas, with the Hezbollah. Hezbollah, for example, put out a statement saying that they support more or less the Twitter's response, defending the Iranian leader's call for our genocide. You have that. You have the BDS movement, which is thriving online. You have now also a lot of conspiracy theories arising out of the corona pandemic, targeting or blaming Jews and Israelis. So it comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, but it's united by, I suppose, by sheer hatred both of Jews and of the Jewish state.
So there's enough there to build a case, and we heard from the White House press secretary that the US will be taking action. So what happens now?
Look, a few things. There's a very strong foundation and base for actual action to be taken. The US has already indicated they are looking into it. Two things they're looking at immediately. One is whether Twitter has actually breached the sanctions on Iran by allowing Khamenei to publish these threats online. They're looking at whether Twitter should be regulated as a publisher, meaning that they could be liable for civil damages. But what I would like to see is one step further, is in order to actually determine how to act, we need to, first of all, identify what is anti-Semitism, and what they need to do is immediately adopt and implement the IHRA, the Holocaust Remembrance Line's definition of anti-Semitism, as a first step to identifying what it actually is.
Well, the fight is certainly not over, and of course, thank you for the work that you're doing. Arsen Ostrovsky, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's been 6 years since IDF soldier Lieutenant Hadar Golden was killed by Hamas terrorists. His body dragged through a terror tunnel back into Gaza. The horrifying abduction taking place 2 hours into a United Nations humanitarian ceasefire in the 2014 Operation Protective Edge between Israel and Gaza. Hamas also holds the body of soldier Oren Shaul, killed days before Hadar Golden, as well as 2 living Israeli citizens, 1 Ethiopian and 1 Bedouin, who entered Gaza and were captured. The inability to bring Hadar home continues to torture his family. And here's a clip of some of the stories told on the Hadar Golden Foundation website.
I heard that my brother is the missing soldier. I right away wanted to go back and help.
When we entered the tunnel, it was very dark. We barely saw anything except for a trail of blood, so I knew exactly where I need to go. I told Lieutenant Shaked, wait here for 5 minutes. If I don't come back, I'm probably dead. I heard Shaked yelling to me, we have to get out of the tunnel, we have to get out.
אני דורשת ממדינת ישראל שלא תעזוב את עזה עד שהיא תחזיר את הילד שלי הביתה.
הצבא אמור להיפגש איתנו במהלך הלילה.
אני מחכה לרקוד איתך בחתונה שלה.
משפחה בצער רב מודיעה שהיא מקבלת את החלטת הצבא.
Now, Hadar's mother, Leah Golden, joins us now. Leah, a pleasure to have you with us. It's been 6 long years that you've been waiting for your son's return. Talk us through how you're feeling as this date rolled around for a 6th time.
Very frustrated because there are so many opportunities to bring my son home, and it seems like intentionally they don't do anything because of I don't know, political interest or whatever you name it, especially now with the coronavirus crisis, which is actually a worldwide humanitarian crisis. So what can be so right to bring our son home now as a confidence-building step to any support to Gaza, especially regarding medical support.
Right, and what efforts are then currently being made to bring back your son, along with the other Israelis who are also being held captive by Hamas?
Look, a year ago, there was a UN Security Council resolution stating that wherever there is an armed conflict in the world, when agreements are initiated right after the conflict, those responsible for initiating these agreements should bring the missing person and the dead as a confidence building step. And that's what we have here as an opportunity around us, especially in Gaza and with all our region. All those countries that are highly involved with Gaza and are the good ones to provide humanitarian aid should take care to our special humanitarian case. And this is to bring our son to decent burial. I mean, preventing us from burying our son is a continuous violation of international humanitarian law and actually violation of any human rights, especially for us as Jews and for Muslims, you know, to bring our son as soon as possible to be buried is the most basic value, and it can be done. I'm willing to interview today, although these are very difficult times for me to see these movies. You know, it just throws me back to very bad feelings. But I believe that this is the time to approach the American administration, especially President Trump, who showed how he can bring home hostages, and just let him know that this is actually the Jewish people wish to do something good for the Jews and for Israel, especially, you know, listening to your discussion about anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism problem. I think there is no worse anti-Semitism act than preventing us from giving burial to our son. It was enough that he was killed by violating a humanitarian ceasefire. It's enough that his human rights were violated. Now, why violating our rights as a family?
Well, Leah, of course, our hearts go out to you and your strength and your bravery for continuing to show up for interviews like this, despite how difficult it is. Really, we do appreciate you coming and sharing your story, and I hope that the pain does end for you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, at a time where division is rife and activism is flooding the streets, knowing how to have important conversations gently and constructively is a growing need. One Israeli woman is taking that on and was recently awarded the Nefesh B'Nefesh Bonei Tzion Award for her work as a social entrepreneur. Zoe Flamenbaum established the School of Shine after immigrating to Israel, motivated by her own need for more meaningful connection, deep conversation and supportive sisterhood. Now, it's a value-based educational platform for women on a mission to empower their voice. And she joins me now in studio. Zoe, a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Such incredible work that you're doing. And you are working here in Israel to breed positive social change through self-development. Tell us a bit about how that works.
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the things that the world is kind of seeking is this idea of gender equality. And we want more women in leadership roles. And first, women need to feel like they identify as leaders. And that starts with your voice. That starts inside. So really in a world where women have been silenced and hidden and shamed and kind of made to be small, School of Shine is a place where I've also created online group trainings and transformational retreats and writing circles to be able to develop our voice and practice our voice. And
I know that your work is about the fact that the change starts at home, looking at that whole idea of self-development. So talk us through how you use writing as a tool to heal and to connect.
Sure. I mean, writing is made up of words, right? And we all live with these kind of millions of narratives in our mind, and those narratives come from all over the place. So the key to really self-development and to empowering voice is to find the narrative that lives within each of us and start it from the inside out. So instead of kind of just living in a world of everyone else's story. It's about knowing your own story, taking control of it, and being able to change it if we want to. And that's where we fall today, too.
Right.
We're in this kind of global narrative, and we have the power to change it and shift it and to create it differently.
But what's the balance then between using your voice as a form of expression and then it going the other way and being able to listen?
That's a good question. I mean, voice is not just about expressing and screaming louder, right? It's also, it's a two-way street, and I think listening is one of the most powerful tools that we have, and also it's about listening intuitively to ourselves and what is right and what is wrong, and knowing that, and not just going along with the crowd, but being able to listen to what speaks to you and what resonates with you, and especially in terms of the power of social media today, I think, is huge in terms of where we focus our attention and what channels, what media we're listening to. And so just the power of one voice and who we choose to listen to, whether that's ourselves or whether that's a million others, that has the power to create the impact in itself.
Wow, Zoe, you are doing such powerful work, and I'm so glad that you're able to come and share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you don't need to be told this if you're a parent, but school summer holidays this year are not easy. Keeping kids entertained while in various forms of lockdown or isolation can be tough, and ensuring your kids are stimulated and continuing to learn and develop is a concern for many parents. But thankfully, one Israeli mother has taken on the task of helping out parents who are square out of ideas. Ariella Gollum is a primary school teacher and mother of 3 and has developed the gorgeous platform full of free content called Learn, Play, Speak, and she is here to tell us more. Ariella, a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. It's great to be here.
Tell us a bit about Learn, Play, Speak and how it came to be.
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, I'm a primary school teacher, and I personally wasn't the best student ever. And I have to enjoy myself, and I want my students to enjoy myself as well. And that's why every lesson and everything I do is play-based. So we get in there, and anything that I'm trying to do or any message I'm trying to pass, I do it through fun and through play. So that's kind of how I started Learn, Play, Speak.
Okay, and you have a particular approach in terms of the way you like to tell parents that they should be engaging with their children.
Of course, well, as with everybody, what happened when the corona lockdown happened is I found myself having to take that teacher role home. And suddenly I was homeschooling, and I never thought that I would be that mum, and I needed really quick and fun and effective ways to interact and teach my children.
And you've brought us some activities.
Yes,
so show us some of the cute things that you're doing with your kids at home, and you're putting them online so that other parents can do it.
Yes, of course. The most important thing is that it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be quick and fun and enjoyable for everyone, also the parent and also the child. So I brought today an emotion activity. What I've done is I've drawn one eye, and I've drawn the matching eye on a sticker, and then all you have to do really is find the sticker here. I've got one. Look at me, creative. I'm winning. And then I find the matching sticker and I stick it on.
So hold it up for a little bit so we can see, and we can let the viewers see what you've got. So you've got 6 little faces, all with different emotions, and then 6 matching stickers. And you've made them yourself. You don't even have to be an incredible artist, although you clearly are, Ari.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, you really don't have to be a good artist. And then from here I would take them and I'd say, okay, well, this emotion is happy. What color do you think that would be? And I would give them a color and say, okay, let's color in the emotions. What color do we think goes with each emotion? And then I could also talk to them, okay, well, when are some times that you've felt this emotion, and how do you feel now, and what color would you use to describe? And it's just a great way
to help children learn how to express themselves as well.
Yeah, and it's something you can do in the afternoon or during lockdown, or if you found yourself in Bidud.
Ari, you are really creating a beautiful service for parents out there, making it easy to have fun and connect with your kids.
That's the idea. Easy is the name of the game.
Thanks so much. All right, well, on that sunny note, let's take a look at the weather forecast. The heat wave finally breaking a little. Tonight should be a bit cooler with lows around 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect clear and sunny skies from north to south with highs averaging 93 degrees Fahrenheit or 34 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. I can't tell if this dog is trying to take the cat out of the photo or put it in the front. That's the perfect way of including everybody. Everyone's involved, everyone's included, even though the cat is less than enthusiastic. Stay. Beautiful. All right, well, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.40 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. And remember, let's use our power to be kinder to one another. I'm Tracy Alexander, and thank you so much for watching.